You've got to believe me. I haven't gone crazy. I'm not fooling around. At first, I thought I was losing my mind. But now I know I'm not. It's not me. This whole town. It's being invaded by the other world. By a world of someone's nightmarish delusions come to life.
Good day, I'm your humble narrator, SideWaysThinker, and I'm just here with another episode of that there Enigmatic Entity, a series in which I discuss the more uncanny video game characters. This time I'm going to be doing something a bit different. This episode is going to be a two-parter regarding Silent Hill. In this second part, I'm going to be discussing the town of Silent Hill itself and the malevolent force that dwells therein. First, a warning. Due to the nature of this character, and of this series generally, there will doubtless be major spoilers for the Silent Hill series. If you do not want it spoiled, stop watching now. Also, I will only be discussing the first 3 Silent Hill games, as those are the only ones whose storylines I consider to be canon. Silent Hill, for the unaware, is a survival horror series published by Konami, set, for the most part, in the titular USA town of Silent Hill. In the games, you play as one of the many protagonists in the series as they search through the town for their own purposes, as the town shows them horrific visions based on their own psyches or the psyches of those around them. The first 3 games in the series are regarded by many, myself included, as not only some of the best horror games in existence, but also as containing some of the best examples of interactive storytelling to be found in the entire medium of video games. The early series is also well known for its stunning visual design, brilliantly written characters, and accurate adaptations and uses of real-world occultism. As I said earlier, I will only be discussing the first 3 games in the series, as they are the only games in the series created by the original developers, Team Silent. Some consider the 4th game, Silent Hill: The Room, as a Team Silent game. I, however, do not, for the simple reason that, while developed under the name of Team Silent, the real creative minds behind the series were busy developing Silent Hill 3, meaning that they had little to no input in the creation of Silent Hill: The Room. The Room also contradicts countless rules and story elements set in the previous 3 games, so it cannot be counted as being in the same continuity. Right, now that I'm done copy-pasting the script of the first video and slightly altering it, let us discuss the town. All 3 of the canon Silent Hill games heavily feature the titular town of Silent Hill, hence the name. In the story-important history of the town, all that is required to know is that, before the English colonization of the area, the land was considered a sacred place by Native American tribes in the area. At some point shortly after the English colonization, a mysterious plague wiped out the majority of the town's population. A long time after that, and presumably shortly before the events of the first game, the town was a resort town, attracting and economically surviving off of its many tourists. During the events of Silent Hill 1, we find out about the long-standing influence of the cult in the town, and that to inhabitants of the town it was generally understood that many in the town adhered to some queer religion, though the cult was never officially named. It was indeed the malicious workings of the cult that brought their demon god, Seed, into a lesser, and thus began the spreading of the nightmare into the mortal world. From this, it has often been assumed that it was the power of the demon god that transformed the town into the nightmare, tearing at the walls of reality until other dimensions began to intersect with our own. This theory is referred to by fans of the series as the multiple dimension theory. It would explain the disappearance of all apparent human life, with the exception of those involved in the plot, as well as the drastic differences in appearance and layout of the world. It would also seem to explain how James Sunderland, the protagonist from the second game, was able to have a pleasant vacation in Silent Hill, presumably some years before the events of the first game, only to have the town be a monster-infested hellhole when James returns in Silent Hill 2. There are a few things, however, that this theory does not explain. If the nature of the nightmare is other dimensions intersecting with our own, why is it that the monsters and environments seem to be reflections of the psyches of the characters involved? If the nightmare is indeed a mixing of our world and another, surely the creatures would be simple horrors and not very specific to the characters who first encounter them. In the first Silent Hill game, the monsters are Alessa's monsters, twisted representations of conscious and subconscious fears and negative memories, made manifest by the nightmare as she accidentally spreads it throughout the town whilst attempting to seal the town away from reality. In the second game, the monsters are representations of James's psyche, usually focusing on his frustrated sexuality and feelings of confinement during and after the death of his wife, as well as his guilt for her murder and his anger at the medical profession for being unable to do anything to help her. Pyramid Head is the purest manifestation of James's subconscious longing for punishment for his crimes. This is often hinted throughout the game, but is flatly stated during the final confrontation in which James fights 2 Pyramid Heads, who, after hearing his confession, impale themselves on the spears they carried, symbolizing that James no longer feels he needs punishment for his sins. We also at one point see a creature known as the Abstract Daddy, or the Doorman, who is a representation not of James's psyche, but that of Angela Orozco, another character summoned to Silent Hill. This character is a representation of Angela's memories of being raped and physically abused by her father. In the third game, the monsters are all based on the mixed psyche of both Heather and Alessa, with countless references found to the monstrous nature of the cult members themselves, to Alessa's remembrance of the pain and torment she felt while kept in the hospital shortly after the accidental fire during the impregnation ritual, along with Heather's own concerns regarding the monstrosity developing within her, leaving many of the monsters as references to unnatural growths or twisted images related to childbirth. The main opposing theory to the generally accepted multiple dimension theory is the spiritual power theory, put forward very strongly by video creators Rossiter and Fungo of Twin Perfect. In the description, you will find a link to a longer and much more in-depth video debunking multiple dimension theory and expanding upon their own theory regarding the nature of the town. I will describe it here in brief. The spiritual power theory, or one-dimension theory, suggests that all the events of Silent Hill take place in one dimension, our reality, and that rather than the characters being moved in and out of dimensions, the world is changing around them due to the aforementioned spiritual power. The in-game lore of the first three games seems to strongly confirm this, as they make special mention of the fact that Silent Hill was once a sacred place among the Native American tribes due to it having a benevolent spiritual power in the area. The theory states that, over time, as the cult began their worship in the area, the spiritual power began to become more malicious, taking the form that the cult wished it to have, that of the demonic god. The seed of the demonic god, which impregnated Alessa, is considered by this theory to be in itself a manifestation of the spiritual power, acting within the parameters of the beliefs of the cult. Thus, the spreading of the nightmare by Alessa wasn't parts of the town being transported to a different dimension, but was rather an active corruption of reality by the spiritual power of the town. After the defeat of the manifested demon god and of the cult at the end of Silent Hill 1, the cult seems to have temporarily disbanded, or to have, for a time, left the region of Silent Hill, or perhaps they are still there, but are in hiding. Regardless of this, it is clear that the cult and their deity no longer set the goals and abilities of the spiritual power by their worship, but that the awakened spiritual power, still corrupted by the cult, has now become a vengeful force, drawing in those with darkness in their hearts in order to punish them. This new goal of the town can be evidenced somewhat by the character of Laura. She is the only innocent human being in the town of Silent Hill, and as such, she is blissfully unaware of the monsters as they never manifest around her. In Silent Hill 3, the seed of the demon god allows the tainted spiritual power to corrupt areas outside of Silent Hill, this explaining how the nightmare manages to manifest in the mall and subway station, as well as the apartment building, all of these places being outside of Silent Hill. If you want to know more about the one-dimension or spiritual power theory, which I personally believe is more likely and more sensible, I suggest you follow the link below to the Twin Perfect video regarding it and the multiple dimension theory. They know more of it and explain it more skillfully than I ever could. Well, that's going to have to be all from me for now. I've been your humble narrator, SideWaysThinker, and as always, keep calm and carry on. Good day.
Robbery? Murder?
Nah, nothing like that.
Huh! You're just a gutless fatso.
What'd you have to say that for?
I thought you said the cops were after you.
No, I just ran 'cause I was scared.